not in the city proper. But look, you made a point a moment ago. These images are unacceptable. These kids on the car, the folks that are taking advantage of this, these aren't peaceful protesters, a lot of these folks, a lot of great people out there doing the right thing. But you get these insurgent groups coming in, sort of these anarchists that are in there to create real problems. And they're just playing right into Donald Trump's hand. And they need to be called out. They need to be arrested. It is wrong to destroy other people's property, and it is wrong to create the conditions that only exacerbate this. But Donald Trump, at the end of the day, is the sponsor of these conditions.
He's absolutely right. This absolutely lays right at Donald Trump's feet. He is the one responsible for all of this, and we need to keep reminding folks of that every day. But notice what Newsom did there. He didn't come out and call them patriots. He didn't call them hostages. There's not going to be pardons sent out to people who breaks the law. That's not who we are. It's who MAGA is, and it's one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen to hear Trump say things, and I'm not going to play the clip because I can't stand hearing the man's voice, but the whole clip about him saying, when they spit, we hit. Okay, so when it's protest in California, you say that, but then you tell your own supporters to go to the Capitol and fight like hell, because if they don't fight like hell, they're not going to have a country. And when they beat police officers over the head and police officers lose their lives, he just says, oh, well, people were upset. People were really mad. These people have been treated very unfairly. Well, you know what? There's a whole lot of people right now being treated very unfairly, sent out of this country with no due process, sent to prisons in foreign countries with no trial or anything, and that is some absolute bullshit. So we're going to continue to call this stuff out. But in this last clip we're going to play from Governor Newsom, he's asked, what would you say to Donald Trump? And I love his response.
To NTR.Takeout, please like the video, share, and subscribe to the channel.
Quick news update on President Donald Trump sending in 700 Marines to support National Guard troops in LA as protests continues over the immigration raids taking place. While some agree with what Donald Trump is doing, others say it's illegal, and having military present is actually making the matters worse. Governor Gavin Newsom has a lot to say. Let's take a listen.
I have a feeling there's a pretty good chance that in the White House there might be a television on and he might be watching us
I hope so.
right now.
Yeah, he can learn something.
What might you say to him if I'll give you the floor, you have the opportunity, what you weren't able to say to him on that phone call or calls that he hasn't taken today?
Where's your decency, Mr. President? Stop. Rescind this order. It's illegal and unconstitutional. And I said it, I'll say it again, it's immoral. You're creating the conditions that you claim you're solving, and you're not. And you're putting real people's lives at risk. This is a serious moment, and it requires serious leadership. And it's time for you to be a commander-in-chief of the United States of America. And I will have your back if you want to work in a relationship of trust and truth in the spirit of our founding fathers. But you come after poor kids, you come after families, we will do everything in our power to stand up and stand in your way.
Governor Gavin Newsom.
We have some more good news, bad news in Trump's attempt to invoke a 1800s era law called the Alien Enemies Act to deport people en masse out of our country to foreign gulags. Let's get into this update. This is Article 3, a series where I read and explain all of the lawsuits coming out against Trump so you don't have to. Let's get into the newest update on the Alien Enemies Act. Latest case is a case coming from the Central District of California. It is Darwin Antonio Arvelo Millan versus Donald Trump. And this particular individual, Millan, is challenging his removal under the Alien Enemies Act. Millan is a Venezuelan citizen who is currently located at an ICE detention facility in California. He's challenging his removal because he is potentially removable under the Alien Enemies Act, which we all know Trump invoked an executive order back in March. This opinion that came out today is good news and bad news. Let's just get the bad news out of the way first. One of the things that were challenged in this lawsuit was whether President Trump could invoke the Alien Enemies Act, and whether the way he did it via executive order is proper under the law, whether it's constitutional. Fortunately, the court ruled that the AEA, the Alien Enemies Act, grant of authority to the president is close to unlimited. It includes the ability to decide whether an invasion or predatory incursion has occurred. As such, this court cannot construe those terms without constraining the president's authority under the AEA. So essentially, the court is saying here is that courts cannot review or question the president's invocation of the Alien Enemies Act. It cannot review or question what counts as a predatory incursion under the Alien Enemies Act and whether Trump properly invoked that. This order disagrees with other orders which expressly say that the courts can evaluate those decisions, so this will eventually go to the Supreme Court. The good news is that this petitioner also challenged the due process issues that were happening under the Alien Enemies Act. In specifically, the Trump administration was not giving these people due process because they weren't giving them notices of the removal. They weren't allowing them an opportunity to challenge the removal, to put in fear-based claims, all of that stuff. And so this court says that yes, due process is required even when you're going to deport someone under the Alien Enemies Act. The court did something really smart here, which was anticipate what's going to be happening at SCOTUS with birthright citizenship stuff. So the court told the petitioner in this case that they need to post a bond because he's issuing a preliminary injunction. He set the bond at $1. So that's what we're going to start seeing in these cases. Other interesting thing about this case is the petitioner seeking to certify a class. Now, this was also a thing that came up at the birthright citizenship oral arguments, which is if you can't impose a nationwide injunction, if that thing is struck down, can petitioners certify classes so the protection from one can now protect the class? In this case, the petitioners wanted to certify a class, basically everybody in the Central District of California who's eligible for removal under the AEA. He went ahead and certified a class. So there is now a class for everyone being held in the Central District of California who's subject to removal under the AEA. That essentially this order applies to them and they have to get due process. So that is great news if you are being held in the Central District. We are likely to see this pop up. They're eventually going to have to file one in every single district where individuals can be held in order to cover and protect everybody in the country. The order just came out today, June 2nd, so undoubtedly this order is going to be challenged by Trump because he challenges everything, so I'll keep you updated.
This is what the civic area of downtown Los Angeles looks like this morning. You can see those two burnt out Waymo autonomous vehicles behind me. 3 more here, protesters torching these. You can see all the debris, the glass on the ground, graffiti on the walls, and there are multiple police checkpoints all over downtown Los Angeles. You can probably see those police lights twinkling in the background. Hundreds of protesters descending on the 101 freeway just behind me, and those clashes ending just a few hours ago. Overnight, chaos erupting in the streets of Los Angeles as protesters and police clashed. Tensions escalating Sunday as thousands of protesters took to the streets in response to President Donald Trump's extraordinary deployment of the California National Guard. Governor Gavin Newsom saying it was assistance he didn't ask for.
We are here to support local law enforcement, the sheriff's office, LAPD, but they didn't need that support. He made this up. This is a manufactured crisis.
Multiple vehicles set on fire, covered in graffiti condemning ICE. An electric scooter thrown from an overpass, damaging a highway patrol vehicle, which was then set on fire. Many hundreds descending on the 101 freeway, blocking traffic in both directions. CHP, California Highway Patrol, deployed smoke. They're moving in, trying to push these protesters out. You can see some projectiles detaining someone there. The LAPD mobilizing resources and LA's mayor pleading for calm.
Our city does not need to be torn apart.
Earlier Sunday, demonstrators swarming LA's federal building, hundreds of LAPD officers responding. And in the ensuing clashes, the LAPD says multiple officers were injured when 2 people on motorcycles tried to crash through that police line. We were right there as it happened. There's some projectiles being thrown just moments ago. A motorcycle seemed to try to break through the police skirmish line. And now you can hear all those flashbangs going off. Police are trying to push those protesters back, firing those less than lethals at very close range. And you can see those projectiles being thrown over. Now that motorcyclist being hauled in here, looks like he's being arrested. Police deploying flashbangs. The streets littered with debris and broken glass. At this point, more than 25 demonstrators arrested after failing to disperse. The escalation began Friday when federal immigration authorities began a series of sweeps in greater Los Angeles, arresting more than 100 people. The demonstrations now entering day 4. Hundreds of National Guard troops were deployed on the streets of LA over the weekend. President Trump bypassing California's governor, ordering up to 2,000 guardsmen to deploy across Southern California. On Saturday in Paramount, just south of Los Angeles, thick black smoke filling the sky after cars were set on fire. The anger coming after reports of an immigration raid on the community, but Paramount Mayor Peggy Lemon saying there was not a raid. The agents were there staging. And in a rare scene Saturday afternoon, a Black Hawk helicopter landing in the parking lot of a Homeland Security office, agents unloading supplies for federal law enforcement. California Governor Gavin Newsom calling on the Trump administration to revoke the order to deploy the California National Guard, saying it only makes matters worse. A memo signed by all the Democratic governors says the activation of guardsmen in their own borders without consulting or working with the state's governor is ineffective and dangerous. But President Trump now saying even active duty Marines could be deployed as 500 remain on standby.
What is the bar for sending Marines to
the bar is what I think it is. I mean, if we see danger to our country and to our citizens, we'll be very, very strong in terms of law and order.
This morning's sharp political reaction after President Trump federalized California's National Guard without state approval. It's the first time a president has taken control of a state's National Guard without approval in 60 years. Democrats say the move could undermine democracy.
We have a president who is moving this country rapidly into authoritarianism. He thinks he has a right to do anything he wants.
I need to get in.
On Sunday, California Congresswoman Maxine Waters addressing National Guard members after being blocked from entering a federal detention facility to check in on a Union president detained during an ICE raid.
I don't know why you're in my city. You didn't. The governor was not contacted. This is wrong, and I hope that none of you will use those guns to shoot anybody.
22 Democratic governors have signed a letter condemning the move, labeling it an alarming abuse of power. It comes as Republicans defend the president's move, saying it was necessary to maintain law and order.
I think we're entering an even another phase, especially under President Trump, with his focus on the homeland, where the National Guard and reserves become a critical component of how we secure that homeland.
There are now thousands of National Guard troops and Marines in L.A.
No ICE in our state!
And a few dozen protesters.
This is what it's like on the dividing line in downtown L.A.
All ordered in by President Trump, and his defense secretary told Congress today we're likely to see more of this around the country. The commander-in-chief using the military in roles usually performed by civilian police forces. The president has made no secret of his admiration for the military. At Fort Bragg today, he watched a demonstration of weaponry in commemoration of the Army's 250th birthday. And he'll be reviewing a massive military parade in Washington on Saturday. The forces on the streets of L.A. tonight far outnumber the demonstrators protesting the arrests of undocumented immigrants. The cost of the deployment, it's estimated at $134 million.
The protesters on this side, but that's a detention center all the way down the street. You can see that heavy police presence. The reason some people decided to get rowdy after a day of peaceful protests, and the police just weren't having it. As a bus believed to be carrying detainees arrived at LA's federal detention center, protesters blocking the entrance were met by pepper balls fired to push them back. It was a brief moment of tension in an otherwise calm day. This is what it's like on the dividing line in downtown LA. Peaceful protesters here, part of a group of hundreds of people in downtown. And right here, we have National Guard troops standing at the ready. Most protesters tell us they're not looking for trouble. Among those we spoke to, Enrico Green, a Marine combat veteran who served in Iraq and Afghanistan. People across the country look at this and say, LA is burning. We need Trump to send in the military, send in the National Guard, the Marines, whoever, to get it under control. You say what?
I say that LA is not burning. LA is protesting, LA is standing up for our neighbors, and LA is showing solidarity.
When they hear the president say, if there are protests, I'm going to send troops into other cities or to other places, how would officers likely be reacting when they hear that?
The concern that our top leadership will have if this continues is, am I going to get to the point where I may have to refuse a direct order to send in or give troops authority to do whatever?
And I would think even contemplating defying an order from the commander-in-chief is a nightmare scenario for most officers.
Sure. Contemplating a scenario like that is a career-ending decision.
After another night of protests in downtown LA, a much more subdued start. Still a small group gathering outside the federal detention facility. All this playing out as the showdown continues between the Trump administration and California leaders.
Tensions continue to simmer in parts of downtown Los Angeles as demonstrators face off against law enforcement and the National Guard.
The police shot the lady in front of me, and as soon as I said, "Hey, you shot a lady," he shoots me.
President Donald Trump is mobilizing another 2,000 National Guard members, doubling his initial deployment despite opposition from top California leaders. About 700 Marines have also been activated.
The federalization of the National Guard and then bringing in the Marines is something different. This is about Trump pretending that he is the king of this nation.
One city official says while many protesters are acting peacefully, some are committing acts of violence and looting.
There are those that are embedded that are really attacking law enforcement. This is not about ICE. This is about completely dismantling law enforcement.
The Los Angeles protests have sparked similar demonstration in other cities like Dallas, New York, and Atlanta. In San Francisco, 150 people were arrested near the Immigration Services building Sunday after some protesters ignored dispersal orders and engaged in acts of violence and vandalism, that according to police. Border czar Tom Homan defended President Trump's decision to mobilize the Marines, saying ICE operations will not stop.
They'll continue every day, not only in California and Los Angeles, they're going to continue in every city across the country.
If you've got millions of illegals and you don't know where they're coming from, they're waving flags from foreign countries and assaulting police officers and law enforcement officers. That's the problem.
California Governor Gavin Newsom insists LAPD didn't need the help. This is the first time in 60 years a president went around a sitting governor to deploy the National Guard. Critics, including several Democrats, contrasting this decision to the one the president made 4.5 years ago.
On January 6th, with violence against the Constitution, against the Congress, and against the United States Capitol, we begged the President of the United States to send in the National Guard. He would not do it.